right, welcome to today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader, where we dive deep on all things leader related to leading yourself and leading others. I'm John Laurito, your host. I got another great guest for you today. I've got Jim Love. He's the founder and CEO of Authentically You Speaking. He's also the podcast host, a really great podcast called Hustling Sideways. I was lucky enough to be a guest on recently. Jim, welcome to the show.
John, thank you so much for having me. And it takes a good podcast host to know one, so we'll take it. I appreciate the time and looking forward to our conversation.
You got it, my friend. Well, I had such a fun time on your podcast. That was a blast, and I've loved talking with you, and I'm really looking forward to our conversations today. So first of all, just let's start with the podcast. How did you get into the podcast? When did you start it? What was kind of your trigger to start it?
Totally. I love this story because it's unique. So this was the end of 2020 going into 2021. And on New Year's Day morning, I sent out a Snapchat, which I tend to do, to a lot of my friends, asking them what their one word was for 2021. As we were moving out of 2020, I just wanted to reset, refresh. And I was like, I would love to hear what your one word is to focus on this year. And Alan, who you've now met, my co-host, responded with his one word. And I don't remember it for the life of me, which is kind of lame. But either way, we started talking, and I was like, "That's great. We should meet up." I've known him for 10 years and went to college together. And while we met up, we both realized that we had a passion for leadership, for meeting people who were really into their passions and wanted to talk about it. And it was over. We had a couple beers, and we're just like, let's start something. Let's just see what we can do with this. And about a month later, we recorded episode 1 of Hustling Sideways, and had no idea what we were doing. I was not a podcast person. I'd been on them before, but never hosted, and went back and forth, and it worked. It just sort of clicked, and we're very, kind of yin and yang of personalities. And Alan's fantastic, and I'm me. No, I'm kidding. But it was a nice kind of give and take. And then we decided, let's have some guests on. Let's talk to our friends and find out what they're really interested and passionate about. And 40 some odd episodes later, we're still doing it, and it's been a blast. And I know you mentioned, to your point, just really diving into leadership. We both love that, and mm-hmm. Alan has his world, I have my world, and it meshes together. And we've been able to meet some amazing people from now, I think, about 18 different states, which has been just awesome. And we expected to be really more like Milwaukee based, because we're both pretty passionate about the city that we're in here. Mm-hmm. But it ended up being friends that introduced us to friends. That's how we met you. And the next connection was always the best one. So that's how it started. And it's going to be, we're going to be going on 2 years soon, I think, if I'm doing that math right. And and it's been a blast. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And it's such a good use of time and meeting people and talking about passion. So it started with Snapchat, and now we are where we are. It's been a lot of fun.
I love that, and that's a really cool story, and how you guys came together. And you do a great job. You feed off of each other. You make it very comfortable. So has the show grown? Has the show grown a lot? Has it grown more than you thought it would? And what's that been like?
Totally. Yeah, we really, and to this day, still don't expect, we knew that people were going to be interested in things like this, but we really truly thought it was going to be like a small city based type of thing where people from Milwaukee will come. And the fact that we've gotten, folks from all different crafts, all different passions, different states. We've had people now. I just met a Canada listener the other day who's going to be on soon, and he's been listening to every pod. So we really would love it to be, continue to grow, but it's gotten more folks than I anticipated and introduced me to more folks. Well, I just didn't know that a simple concept of exploring people's side passions and general things that they're really interested in would garner so much attention, because it sounds so simple to me. When I did it, I was like, this is just we'll just talk. Let's see what happens. And I think people really feed off of our energy and want to talk to people who are genuinely interested in meeting them. And that's what I found out is when I'm talking to folks, I put my phone down. I'm not we're always so very hyper focused on what's next. And it's really a good challenge for me to be in the moment and just ask questions and react and respond and, do our research. But at the end of the day, I just sort of say what comes to my mind. And Alan and I really like meeting people. And that's something that we share a passion for. And our individual passions, are in different areas, but that's what I think has made it grow is people, I think, can tell that, we just sort of started this and we're not in it for any other ulterior motive other than just to meet people and see where it goes. So people dig that. And I think people dig authenticity and that's what I found as a speaker generally, but that's what's helped it grow. And it's, we'll continue. And, like I said, meeting all these people. I never really anticipated it being a thing, and it's become a thing. And I meet people now all the time. They're like, "I love your podcast." I'm like, well, that's great. Didn't expect that, but I'll take it.
Right. You know what? It's funny, and there's so many good lessons out of it because I found the same thing. I mean, one of the challenges is you don't really know. You don't have an audience. You don't have live audience. You don't have visual, nonverbal feedback or anything like that. So you just don't know, is this episode landing in the right way? Are people liking it? Are they not? I mean, it's really hard. And even some of the data you get with podcasting is not always, real time and exact. So you kind of got to trust your gut. You kind of got to feel your way through it. And I'm sure you found that same thing. And but wow, isn't it cool when somebody says something like that? Hey, I listen to your podcast all the time. I get people say that, and I'm like, you do? I have no idea you do. I mean,
it's powerful, and I think part of that too, like to your point of you just don't really know what's going to happen. One of our podcast guests, like the first maybe 5 episodes, said something that really impacted me. Is she's a content creator. She's blogger, she makes videos, all that kind of stuff. And she was like, I don't really care what people think. And she said it in a way of like, I thought that was so powerful because we put stuff out there and a lot of people do care what people think, and I do sometimes too. And I had to kind of let go of that to be like, if people don't like this, they just won't listen. And that's fine. It's okay. We're not saying anything offensive or, anything like that. And we're just putting ourselves out there. And that really kind of helped shift my gears into throw it out there. If they like it, fantastic. If they don't, fantastic. Like I'm enjoying it, and that's what counts. And that's really where it almost took the pressure off and gave me creative freedom to do what I wanted to do. And same with Alan, to really make that happen. And that's the result, is that we're more relaxed. We're just like, if this goes well, great. And we think it did, we feel that passion energy with it.
So let me ask you that. That's a great topic. I know a lot of people struggle with that. There's a lot of people out there that really need feedback. They rely on what people think and how people think and what people think about them is extremely important. But it's so limiting, and it really is a handicapped feeling where you're doing everything for other people. And I've lived in that zone for part of my life as well. And when you figure out how to get rid of that and get to like your friend, the content creator, where you don't care, you become a much better version of yourself. But how do you get there? I mean, how do you start to just judge how you do, get your own self-satisfaction, and you be your own measurement of how you did versus relying on everybody else to tell you?
Totally. I love that question. I realized probably my first couple years out of college was that my success in anything that I experienced that, is equal to success, it is all internal. It's up to me if I determine what I do is good. And it's come from a place of what I'm doing is really fulfilling what I am. And so if I'm doing activities that are fulfilling me, I really don't care what people think about it because it's my best self. And you're always going to encounter, our world is fairly negative. I think we all know that. And you're going to encounter people who are haters and just don't like you because you're doing your thing. And that's what I found. And so I instead of focusing on them, like I shifted gears to focus on the people that are going to, correspond with me positively. And I sort of shield out the people that don't like something because just they don't want to. I think a lot of people are like that. They choose to be negative, and I had focused on that for a while, and I think a lot of people can. But in the end of the day, if you're doing something that makes you really happy and you're being authentic through it and showing your passion, that's a win-win, and you should keep doing that because it's going to catch on at some point to someone. And even if it doesn't, you're filling your cup up. And at the end of the day, if you're doing that for yourself, you're going to be able to put that positive energy onto everyone that you encounter. And so no matter what, it's going to be a win for you. And it took me a while to sort of not care about those folks. And it's not like I have a ton of haters. I shouldn't say it, that way, but there's certainly people who, I've been accused of toxic positivity, every now and then. And I'm like, if you're going to sit and be in your own negativity all the time, I can't help you. And that stinks. I'm sorry to hear that you're feeling that way, but I'm going to keep doing me. And it's something that works for me, and it's something I enjoy. So that's the mindset that I've sort of, created through all
and
this.
You've got to kind of mentally block those people out because you're right. Some people they hate because they're jealous, they're envious. They see you do something they wish they could do or whatever the case may be. And you don't know what the source of it is. And to try and figure it out and try and appeal to that type of person is just a losing proposition. But it's funny. You made me remember a story when my kids are the ones that really made me aware of it in a really funny way. I used to make them breakfast in the morning, and I remember I was and I still get like this because it's just kind of fun. If I cook something, I want to know how people like it. So if I made my kids pancakes, I'd be like, how are the pancakes, guys? And they'd be like, oh, they're great. And I'm like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate them? And I'd have them go through this whole rating thing. And they're like, Dad, you can taste the pancakes yourself, right? You know how they are. And they'd made a joke about it. I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. You know, it doesn't, I know how I did if I can taste it and see the result or whatever. But it's funny. I remember the feeling even in business where it's like, I do a presentation and you do a lot of keynotes. I'm going to get into that.
Right. Yep.
And I didn't feel good unless I got a certain very positive result. Even if I felt I knocked it out of the park, I did not feel good unless I got a certain reaction from the audience. And wow, that was tough. And then it got to a point where it was like, I felt I set the bar so high. If I didn't get a standing ovation, I felt like it wasn't an A or an A plus. If I didn't, and it was like, well, some people love it and they won't give a standing ovation, and other people think it's okay and they'll still stand, so there's still not a good measurement of success. But yeah. So how do you, do you know what I'm talking about? I mean, do you get caught in that sometimes? Or
yes. Yeah. Yes, my first few times speaking, I remember specifically probably my third time speaking. I had done one. It was like a freshman orientation at a high school, and like I went in and I just turned up. Like I got wild, and it was like I wasn't sure how it went, and I remember not allowing myself to feel any emotion until I got the feedback back. I was like, let's wait for that, and then I did, and the feedback wasn't awesome, and it like totally like that talk went great, and like it was like maybe 3 people that gave something, I wouldn't say negative, but like I thought it was okay, and like that, like I was derailed from that, and I remember now I think back, I'm like, but then there were 47 good comments that I didn't focus on, and so that was really like a moment for me when I reflected on it. Like I need to you're not going to please everyone anytime anywhere. It just won't happen. And if you're trying to do that, you're going to lose, and you won't succeed. If you really focus on the people that are gathering something from it, or knowing that you went in and gave it your all, like that. That's really what I find my joy in now. Is I know how much I prepare. I know how much I practice. And then when I get into it, I give it everything I've got, and I'm exhausted when I'm done.
Yeah.
And that is a success to me. Like, and I'm really confident in my message. I know that's going to get through to some people, and it won't to everyone. That's totally fine. But I'm no longer awaiting feedback, from people on how many stars, it was of this or of that. Like I've been doing this long enough where my message I know is impactful. And now it's like, if I put work into it and I make it my own craft, and I know how much preparation went into that, like that's already before I get there. I'm like, I feel good about this.
Yeah.
Like, let's do this. And now it just becomes the show. So totally like mindset difference between when I was like 23 and now 31 of that being, a thing of really not relying on other people specifically to fulfill, my craft. That can't be the case, because I know what I can do. Right.
You've got to be your own measurement. And I think that's such a great takeaway from this. If listeners are out there struggling with that same thing, it's, number one, to know that you and I have been there, and many, many people have been in that spot. And when you figure out how to use a different measuring stick, which is your own, and not what other people say, but you control what goes in, and you control how you do, and you control how how you did. You can measure it. You can say, all right, that was my A game, or that was my B game, or whatnot. And as long as you feel like you delivered your A game, great. Give yourself the satisfaction, the pat on the back. It doesn't have to be somebody telling you that. Wow, it was amazing. There's so many times I've been watching somebody speak, or been through a meeting or an interaction or whatever, and I was so impressed with somebody. They did a phenomenal job, and I didn't tell them. And it wasn't deliberate. It wasn't, I just either didn't have the opportunity, or it just wasn't in the moment, or it just didn't come to mind, whatever. But if they were deriving their satisfaction purely on what I said, then they would have evaluated themselves as not being very great, when I thought they were off the charts fantastic. I just didn't communicate that. So I looked at it that way, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's kind of interesting. If many, many people are like me on that end, then there's a lot of people that may think I did a great job and just not tell me,
Exactly. Yeah. Like, we only really do it at the extreme ends. If something went horribly wrong, or if something was like monumentally life-changing, and we oftentimes don't get feedback on the in-betweens. Right. And I, the same way, like if I saw a speaker that did a good job, I'd be like, awesome. And then I'd walk away and go on with life. And, and having that mindset of like the end user almost in a way is important. And you're realizing that like not everyone's going to give this amazing thing. So derive it from your internal, like what you're doing, the work you're putting in, that's what counts. And at the end of the day, that's what you have full accountability for. And the only thing you can control is that's it. And you can't control how people react to it or respond to it. Exactly. It's the work you put in, and that should be where really your pride comes from.
Yeah. How about when I know you've dealt with this because I have too. How about when you're doing a presentation and you see someone or even a group of people in the audience that are just clearly not engaged? They're on their phones, they're talking to each other, maybe they're looking bored, maybe even they fell asleep. These are all things I've seen and had in audiences, whatnot. How do you handle that mentally? Because that also can relate to a lot of other things that people do. It doesn't need to be standing on a stage.
Totally. I had to figure this out pretty early on that I have to focus on the people that are not doing that, because you're going to get, every time you give a talk, anytime you present something, not everyone in the room is going to be engaged, and that's totally fine. Focus on the people who are. And so I will pick out people right away that I can tell are in, even if it's like staff members of where I'm at, or like the boss or something, of people even setting an example. But I have like an audience avatar in my head of who I know I want to speak to. And so I'm trying to see all that person and all those people who are engaged, and just totally ignore the other folks. Because I've had that where I'll see them, they're on their phone, and that happens. It happens a lot. And like, I'll just like lose my train of thought. And I had to retrain myself to, if I see that, I immediately block it out and look at the person next to them that's like fully in. And that's really helped me to block it out, because it's going to happen, right? Like you're never going to have a moment unless you are, the most famous person in the world, and still people will be on their phones or whatever it might be. And, and you have to dive in the folks that are caring, because that's who you're speaking to. Like, in the end of the day, if people are going to choose to not listen to you, that's their loss, number one. But number two, it's got nothing to do with you. That's really, they chose to be there, and they chose to distract themselves, and that's fine. That's the way the world works. But when I see the folks who are really, really listening and really engaged and have a smile on their face and nodding, that's who I'm staring at each time I need to do audience interaction. And like, you can tell them right away. You can sense who those people are, and block out the other ones, because it won't help you. It won't help them. And they've decided, they made the decision to not be present, and that's okay. That's something that they chose to do. So the rest of the people are who you should focus on.
Well, it's interesting. I've got a story about that. I did a keynote earlier this year for a company at their leadership conference, and there were probably a beautiful auditorium. It was one of these stadium seating, arena style type of things. And there were a few hundred people or so it was pretty crowded. And I remember in my presentation, this whole section, and it was right dead center, like midway up in the center. And so right in my eye contact was just totally not responsive. When I say not responsive, like I would make a joke or something, they would not even change facial expression. They were just staring dead at me. And I'm like, what the heck? I mean, it really, and it got in my head a little bit. As much as I tried to block it out, I'm like, I tried not looking at them and this and that. Well, when I got done with the presentation, what I realized is the company did something kind of interesting. There were a bunch of people that couldn't make it because we're still kind of in the tail end of COVID. And so what they did, they put them on virtual, but they took and they made cardboard cutouts of these people, and they were life size, and they were extremely accurate, no. And they put them in the seats. So what I was looking at, I thought I was looking at a live group of people, were all cardboard cutouts. It was a few rows of these people that were dead center, and I'm like, all right, that's really funny. That's clever.
That's hilarious.
And I had no idea I'm looking at cardboard cutouts. So.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine. Yeah, that would really. Now I'm thinking about that. That would really throw me off too.
Oh, it was so funny. I've never seen that done. It was a great idea. It was kind of cool. But I didn't know, and I'm like, okay, well that.
Yeah. No, I love it. One other thing I do too. This is a total subjective thing. But if I'm speaking, and and I sense maybe even just in a room generally, like I'm going on too long. Like I gotta kind of switch topics. I'll just kind of get into it. I'll take the microphone down and we'll shout the next thing I want to say, and that brings people right back. Like if you're getting shouted at, and especially when it's something important, like I know, and I have specific things I do it on too, but if I generally can sense like just maybe this topic is not totally fine, I'll throw it down and I'll shout and I'll really get into it, and then people get re-engaged. And it's something that I've done. Like I used to do a lapel mic, that was right here, and because I hold like note cards when I'm speaking. It's the way I've always done it. And so the lapel mic I can't do that with, and now I've learned that I have to have a handheld, because that's actually an advantage that I have, is I could pull it down and shout and really get people back into it, and pick and choose the moments I do that. So that's been like a huge tool for me to really get into it. And I know, I mean, it doesn't always work when there's too many people, but I can shout pretty loud, so I can get it. And
Yeah.
and sometimes I'll even put the microphone down and be like, "Can you guys hear me?" And if they can, I'm like, I might just do this whole talk shouting, because I prefer that. And then it's more of like you and I are in this room together and I'm speaking right at you.
I like that. And there's a good lesson in that too. It's like, you've got to engage people and figure out how to do it and make people feel, I think the best speakers, or even the ones, not even a speaker, but somebody who, people that just have this certain presence and aura that makes you pay attention to them. I get asked that question a lot. I'm like, how do you develop an aura and a presence that's kind of a leadership presence, and you hard to describe, but everybody knows what you're talking about. And a lot of it has to do with that. I mean, I see the leaders, the people that do, when they walk into a room and they do kind of command that presence, they're people that are engaging. They tend to make, even if there's a room of 50 people, you feel like they're looking or talking to you. You feel like you're one of the most important people in the room. And I think that's such a great quality of a leader, is their ability to do that, to connect with people. Even though there might be a group, they have this incredible ability to connect with people on an individual level. And speak to them. Even though they're speaking to a large group, they feel like they're just tapping right into that person. And I'm interested in your thoughts, number one, on that, and also other things. You've worked with and seen tons of examples of leadership. I'm interested in some of the people that inspire you and why.
Totally. No, I love that. And I think when leaders, whether it's a speaker or just a leader in general, leading with like passion and enthusiasm makes that happen. When you walk in and people know you care, they know you want to succeed, and we're all in this together. Like, then you feel like it's a we thing versus a they thing, and they come in ready to rock. And I've experienced that speaking, and I've heard feedback before of like, I felt like he was talking right at me. I like to make eye contact and make it really relatable, and we're all here, like we're present in this moment, and let's take advantage of it. And that's something that's been really big to me. And I've known leaders that do that, and known leaders that don't do that. And there is a significant difference in terms of just motivation, my engagement with them, and so I always try and make that as relatable as possible when I'm out, and then speak to people after. Like I stick around, and I want to talk to them. I didn't get into this to just like speak and then leave, and I actually hate when I have to do that. If I go somewhere and I have to leave right away, it's like I want to hear from them. So when I'm able to stick around and actually speak to people and know that I'm also a normal guy too, I'm not like some wildly famous, no time for anyone. Like I'm just a guy who's got a message, and that's really what it comes down to. And so when they can see that, and I have a passion for what I do, it always helps, right? And that's been a big thing for me. And to your question of folks who I've seen do that, the gentleman who actually mentored me to be a speaker about 7 or 8 years ago, his name is Arik Jackson, and he's an international speaker, and someone who has become a dear friend now, but who I still look up to and inspires me. And Arik has this ability when he comes in, he turns up, right? He puts all his energy to it. And I've modeled my speaking life after him. That's really, when I saw him speak for the first time, I was 16. So this was, 16 years ago. And I immediately wanted to do what he was doing. And I remember that moment of, I could tell how passionate he was. He was showing his voice. He was being himself unapologetically. And that was what he spoke about, and also what he was doing. And that was the important part for me. I always, when I speak about authentic leadership, that's kind of my big message, is I not only want to talk about what being authentic means and why it's important, but do it as well. Like, be authentic, be transparent, be vulnerable. And those moments are really what people attach themselves to. So I'm not perfect, never will claim to be. And I tell them that, and I encourage them all to be authentic, and I'm showing them how to do it. And so it's kind of like this double impact thing, because it's always the way I've lived my life. And I finally figured out how to speak it. So Arik mentoring that with me and showing me what it means to actually motivate and to be authentic and to do you unapologetically, as he says, and now it's become a mantra of mine, was really critical. And I see the way that he interacts with people when he's done. He really wants to be there and cares about them. And I've seen speakers that don't do that. Like when I was in high school, I actually had a speaker come to my high school, as someone who I knew from just the speaker bureau, whatever it was. And he came in and was kind of a jerk when he started. I talked to him individually, and I was just like so excited because I'd seen him speak a few times, and was, you're really ready. It's someone that you've known for a while. And he walked in and just like made like 2 bizarre, fairly degrading comments about the people he's walking by. And I'm like, this guy's kind of a jerk. It really threw me off, because his message was so anti his comments before he got there. And that made me be like, I don't know if I want to do it. It really made me question what being a speaker is about. Then I realized like, I don't need to be like that. I can be myself and also still be the speaker. And that was really like, that was what not to do. Right. And it taught me a lot. It taught me that my persona on stage, while it is sort of this show, if you will, it is me. And that's who I am. And I'm on fire for leadership, and I always will be. And I believe in it, positive energy, gratitude, all that kind of stuff. And so RX showing me that, and this gentleman, I'm not going to say his name, but he showed me really how not to do it. I don't even know if he's speaking anymore, honestly, but that was a very, specific moment for me, and seeing how they both sort of operate in their crafts, and it felt hypocritical to me almost, in a way of like, how can you possibly act like that to people and then try and pretend you're this great speaker with a great message? So those were both heavily influential in both ways, that really crafted my ability to be a speaker and to speak to motivate versus just to talk. Right? It was really important.
What about that? And that brings up a great point, because I think I talk to a lot of new leaders, or leaders that get promoted, or even leaders that might have gotten promoted and are leading people that they were not leading before, that were colleagues and peers of theirs and friends of theirs. So you've got some challenges there. And a question that I get, or a problem that people tend to face, is they don't know how, or they don't feel that being themselves is going to lead to people following them, that they feel like, I need to be something, I need to turn on a part of my personality that might not be as strong, or I need to act a little different when I'm in front of the group or in a work setting. When I'm in person, I can just be myself, but I gotta be this type of person. What do you say to that? What do you say to that new leader that's kind of struggling with that?
It's a really good question, and it's a totally valid struggle. The first thing I would say is they're in that position because of who they are. And that's the thing to really grasp onto, is people don't get promoted or put in leadership positions randomly. It's well thought out, it's interview process, whatever it might be. So they've done something, or have been a part of something, and part of their personality is the reason why they are where they are. So putting all that self-doubt to rest is really important to really start off. But I would say, like, there will be things that you won't be comfortable with, like being a director, maybe that's not your thing, if you're depending on your leadership style. But at the end of the day, the leaders that lead with empathy, love, and transparency, those three things are going to be successful, and people do follow that. So when I have a professional life, when I'm with my team, like I do a soul check. I will do like a one-on-one, and I'll be like, hey, first 10 minutes, how are you? Like, tell me how your life is going. Tell me, because I want to get down to knowing them, knowing what's going on in their lives, and then talking about what you're doing for work, all this kind of stuff, but to really guide them to know that they're cared about, and I have energy and passion for what they're doing, and that their work is important. And I think anybody who feels appreciated and feels heard is going to follow your lead. It will happen like that. If you make them feel like they're important, and they're a valuable asset to what you're doing, and they really impact the work that's going on in your organization, people are going to lead. And then obviously there's the parts that come with, with budgeting and talking about, how they can grow, and constructive criticism, all that kind of stuff. But those soft skills of that empathy, that transparency, and that love, and love is a strong word when it comes to leading a team, but it's important. Like, if people really know that you appreciate them and you care about them, they're going to show up, and they're going to do the work, and they're going to work extra hard for you. And people leave leaders constantly. That's not too often are people leaving, their position necessarily, but it's a lot of times the leadership isn't working for them. And if you could be that leader that makes it impossible for someone to leave, like if they're going to leave, they're going to find something that just has to be this perfect fit with the best leader possible, because the way that you're doing it and leading with that empathy and knowing that you care about them, and then that makes the more honest conversations a lot easier, because it's coming from a place of you want them to grow and succeed, and it's always the next step. So a lot of times I'll tell my team, like, if I'm if you have a career goal, or if you have something you want to do, and in 2 years, you're still on my team and still talking about it, like, that's a problem. Like, I want to get you to the point of where you're hitting that next step and continuing to grow and succeeding. And then they're going to feel that they work harder, and that all leads to success. So it's putting the self-doubt to rest, and then taking that extra step and being the leader that you are. I think people have that self-doubt, taking it to the next level and leading with that sense of honesty and showing respect and dignity. And that says a lot. People, it's hard to not respect a leader like that and want to follow in their footsteps and see how energetic they are for their work is really important.
Well, I think that's so profound, and it's so true. And bottom line is, people see through. They see the inconsistencies, just like you saw that speaker. They'll see the cracks in the armor when there's not truly authenticity, and there's some kind of false something, they're going to pick up on it eventually. It's like you see somebody's Facebook post and you get to know them and you're like, wait a sec, that's not painting an accurate picture of what's going on. And you see that so much, and then you start to scratch your head and wonder, okay, well, so I think you've got to realize as a leader, eventually, you can't be somebody that you're not for an extended period of time. There ultimately is a breakdown and a rub, and ultimately trust breaks down.
Totally. And the best leaders I've ever met in my life, and this is 100% of the time, are the ones who are the most confident and love who they are. Those like two things are always a thing, because if you don't love who you are and love who you become, and you're not confident in it, you're not going to spread that to anyone. Like the leaders that have that can radiate that confidence and that energy onto everyone that they encounter. And it's contagious. People catch that. And that's when you get that charismatic person coming in who's just comfortable with who they are, comfortable in their own skin, and then are able to take the team from where they are to where they should be. But it starts there. Like it starts internally. And if you can have that ability, and I will say that's a decision you can make. That's not something that has to come with, any sort of like training or a seminar or something. That's something you could decide in your seats today to make it your decision to go and to be confident who you are and love who you've become. And that love word, not only is it my last name, but it's something that I feel very deeply about. If you love that part of yourself and you have confidence in your leadership ability, you're going to pass it on to everyone. And that radiates so deep, and it becomes something that can be really part of who you are and is the fiber of your being, and can be spread to everyone that's on your team or people you encountered, a waitress at a restaurant, whoever it might be, people that you can inspire in daily life. And it's really important. And it's something that can be done today. It's, and I believe in that very, very strongly.
I love it. Great words of wisdom. If people, Jim, I know we're out of time, but if people want to learn more about you or authentically you speaking or get plugged into your podcast, where should they go? How do they find that?
Totally. So I have a website for myself. It's goauthenticU.com, where you can find my speaking and email me, et cetera. All my info's on there. And then my podcast, Hustling Sideways. You can find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. We have a Gmail account, hustlingsideways@gmail.com. And you can please connect with me. And I love being on podcasts, love talking about leadership and finding ways to continue to grow and to help motivate people to be the best leader they possibly can become. So I would love that. Bring them on.
I love it. Well, the podcast is great. I think I gave you the feedback. You guys kind of have that vibe of Shameless, the podcast that Jason Bateman does with his buddies, and it's so great. And so your banter at the beginning has kind of reminded me of that. I thought it was really cool. But that's great. We'll have all that in the show notes for everybody's listening. You can go and see that and click on and take you to everywhere that Jim just mentioned there. So, Jim, this has been a blast, man. I love having you on the show. Love talking with you about life and leadership. And congrats on what you're doing. I know you're making a huge impact out there, and you're enjoying it. You're loving it. You're passionate. I can see that and tell that. And I just give you all the credit in the world, and I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you, John. And it's a pleasure to chat with you. I know you and I have connected a bunch over the last few months, and really appreciate it, and looking forward to even more. And my respect for you is off the charts, and I just appreciate being a part of this, and I'm looking forward to more.
Awesome. Well, thanks, my friend. And thanks all for joining today. As always, like, share, subscribe. Go down below, give a 5-star review. That's important for sure. And I always appreciate your ideas for future guests and content. Like I said, we'll have all the references that Jim mentioned in the show notes, the links to his website as well as to his podcast. Check it out for sure. Great stuff. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.